Hey, everybody. This is welcome back to another episode of the Hazmat Guys Nation Roundtable. This is a multimedia platform we use to bring hazmat response information and training tips from hazmat members from around the globe. I'm Bobby Salison, and I'm acting as the hostess tonight once again. I'm joined by good friends Bob Kosh and Phil Ambrose. Once again, let's just go into it. What do we do? Where are you from? What do you do? Things you do.
Go ahead, Bob.
I'm Bob Castrignano. I'm a hazmat lieutenant with Orlando Fire Department. I'm also a sales and training director for HazSim.
I'm Phil Ambrose. I'm a fire hazmat specialist paramedic in Southern California, and I run Hazmat Nation and have a little thing to do with HazSim.
Excellent. Awesome. And, tonight, it's actually kind of fun. Last night we just started playing around with this whole blab.im thing, the four of us, and me and Mike last night recorded our live podcast that we usually do every week. And we used Blab, and it was pretty cool. We tried it out live, and it worked out very well. But last night we did chemical suicides, and tonight we're doing a roundtable on chemical suicides. So I'm kind of spun up on it. These two guys have done quite a bit of this stuff. So, Bob, you want to take it away? What do you got?
Yeah, I'll start it off a little bit. Chemical suicides have really started coming to the forefront in the last probably 5-10 years. It was a big thing in Japan, moved its way across the country, across the world, really, via the internet. And what's kind of scary is that you can get how to make these different chemicals, these different potions, concoctions, whatever you want to call them, just from the internet.
Right.
Sometimes they make signage that protects us, the first responders. Sometimes they don't. So that's kind of why I got into the background of it, how, the different types, because there are several different ways of people doing it, whether it's through a chemical or just really just something as simple as displacing the oxygen. So there's a lot of things that can hurt first responders, which is kind of why and how I got into it. So it's just something we can do to protect each other, learn from each other, and share the information.
Right. Phil, anything?
I concur, and if anybody hasn't been listening to the podcast, they need to. And Bobby and Mike do a real good job of breaking it down to awareness level and operations level, because not everybody is at that technician level. And with all of the chem suicides, and you mentioned it on the podcast last night, I caught part of it. I was shuttling kids around. We talk about the first one, which, everybody can Google it, was in Pasadena, California. In fact, I'm working with some guys here today that were on that call. But it's been a long time. People were parking their car in the garage and turning it on and doing the same thing with CO. It just got a little more exotic. And also we started seeing them where they intentionally did it, not just to take out themselves, but to take out the next people that come in to help them, specifically first responders. So, I hope we can open up the discussion and cover some first in things. I had some info I had to share that I'm happy to go over also.
Yeah, you know what? One of the things we were talking about last night was that it seems that the mindset of those that are trying to use the chemical suicides to kill themselves has kind of changed, at least in my purview. They're almost cordial to us as responders. I mean, like, they're almost like, exactly. It's almost a little spooky where they're like, they put up the signs. They say, listen, this is what I did, and this is the off gases. This is how long you have to ventilate it. They know exactly how much to produce, how much to do the job. They've almost gone to the point where they've put in a neat little package, and all you have to do is really just go in there and take care of it. And remember, as first responders, that you're going to have to do a couple of different things. And I'm sure we're going to go through this in a little while, but, you're going to have to do your basic tenets of firefighting or EMS or hazmat. And that's going to be to wear the proper PPE, to do your scene safety, to do your situational awareness, and take care of your people. Right. I mean, like, that's basically what it comes down to.
Absolutely. Because, there's times where, like you mentioned, the signage here in Florida, people tape that sign to the inside of their car. You've got the heat and the humidity during the summer. Well, good part of the year, but mostly during the summer. And then all of a sudden that glue releases, that sign falls down inside the car, and you get a call for a person pass out behind the wheel. And every one of us, and those that are watching or listening, how do you treat that? Most people go, it's just somebody that's probably drunk. or whatever the case may be, maybe a medical emergency, and they don't think that, hey, this might be something different, and that signage isn't there, or it fell down, or whatever the case may be. So yeah, we definitely need to step back a little bit and maybe rethink some of our initial approaches to the scene.
What do you guys see, Phil? What do you see more of? Do you see more of the compartment where they fill up the bathroom or the kitchen or the whatever, or do you see more of the exit bag, which is basically that bag they put over the head, they affix it around the neck, and they put the tube inside to inject whatever their mixture is? What do you see more of in California?
So I think, and I can't, I'm not the foremost expert on this, especially for California, but keeping attuned to the news, I'd say more the small scale exit bag type, only because in the city, it's one of the ones I'm going to go over that I interviewed somebody for this morning had to do with, large quantities of fertilizer, and those were available because they were out in an area where it was, that was the say weapon of choice when there wasn't a gun or a rope available. So as far as today, I would say, it's probably more a mix on the personal level, meaning the asphyxiants versus the chemical mixture. But now that anybody can Google how to put together a chemical concoction, it's a lot easier. That always makes me wonder, kind of like the unsuccessful hanging, meaning, there's lots of suicides that are attempted that they work on. If you look at suicide in general, somebody that goes and jumps off a bridge may have tried some other things beforehand. So maybe they tried different ways to mix chemicals and they had, good ventilation or those things. So what we end up seeing isn't always maybe what was attempted, but it's also why we've been talking about it, because it's going to be that EMS run or that casual contact that you're going to run across it. Because if you know about it ahead of time, meaning slumped over the wheel with the signage, likelihood you're going to BA up. But the ones, and I was going to talk about them, say Lowell, Massachusetts, and the one they just had in Indiana, those didn't necessarily come in as the cops saying, hey, we have somebody slumped over the wheel with a sign. It came in as a routine medical call, and then first responders went to the hospital.
Right. But see, in Florida, once again, that's the land of the death waiting room down there. What do you see a lot of? There's a lot of young kids down in Florida. That whole area is a lot.
Yeah, and the ones we've seen predominantly in Florida have been the hydrogen sulfides. We've had a couple of potassium cyanide, and then we actually had one where a lady had taken in a local area had taken the helium bottles from a party store, and she found out she had a terminal medical condition and decided to suffocate herself. And that came in as a simple well-being check. So, that's another point, it could be somebody passed behind the wheel, or they haven't talked to a relative in a couple of days or whatever. So we, any of those types of calls, the more information we can get en route to the scene, the better we are. But obviously, the amount of calls everybody has, you'll probably get on the scene before you get the information. You just got to take that extra few seconds to kind of size things up a little bit.
Right. And with the size up, and I'm just kind of riffing off the top of my head because we just did this podcast last night, is, you as the first responder and all the guys that are listening and girls that are listening out there, when you're coming up to one of these scenes and you have that EMS call or whatever you want to call it, and you have that slumped over guy in the car or that room, apartment, whatever it might be, remember a couple of small things: that the guy or girl wants to be in the smallest compartment available. Right? They don't want to be in a ballroom. Imagine how much chemical they're going to need in order to fill up that thing to do the deed. So they're going to try to be in like a closet. They're going to try to be in a bedroom or a kitchen, something small. And if they're in something that has a leaky door, window, or anything like that, it's probably going to be taped off, plasticed up, whatever it is. So that should be indicator number one. If they're in a car, look for that exit bag. It's kind of an easy one. We were joking around last night. We actually started to make our own Hazmat Guys podcast exit bags. We're going to brand them and sell them off. Try to make a couple of bucks.
Full body with a zipper.
Listen, I'm shameless with this stuff.
Just like the bag with a Christmas tree. It's ready to go when the Christmas tree's done. They just pull it up over and you're good to go.
No, listen, where did you get that? That is awesome.
No, it's just a drink. I'm on duty, so it's actually non-flammable.
That is awesome. Actually, I'm going to put that sticker on my water bottle now. That's awesome. But also, and we're just kind of getting back into the chemistry thing, is that there's basically two ways to kill yourself with this method, right? I mean, we have asphyxiants, and then we have simple asphyxiants, and we have chemical asphyxiants, right?
Right.
You guys want to throw in a couple of things about that, or I'll throw in? What do you want to do?
Well, and don't forget the organophosphates. People just drinking, poisonous stuff. That's a whole different ballgame.
I had a guy that actually drank Drano, like a good portion of it, and I actually happened to be there for the autopsy, and it was insane. I couldn't believe the stomach. It was like a fishing bag. It was nothing. But anyway.
Well, and before we get too far off topic, something we need to remember: it's not only the first responders, but then we've got the medical staff. If it is something that's somebody that's kind of viable or still viable or whatever, then you got the ME. So there's a whole gamut of people that need to be prepared and learn more about this and take some extra precautions. Not just the first responders, the cops and firemen to show up.
Oh,
I like what you guys did last night. At least the part of the podcast I heard, but we talked about the signs, and I don't think I could stress enough that the sign is not going to be hazmat call, chemical suicide call. It's going to be miscellaneous medical. It's going to be man slumped over the wheel of his car. And we used to get a frequent flyer who used to sit in his car and defecate and then throw it out the window. So when you approach that car, and
I think he's in Florida now, actually.
Yeah, if you approached that car, you knew that there was going to be, a very messy scene, and that's kind of the same approach you need to take to any of those slumped over the wheel call until you know whether it's going to be feces or actually something that can hurt you. But then going down the line, what Bob just mentioned with the hospitals, Taos, New Mexico had the guy last summer who shut down the entire ER because he ate rat poison pellets, which, if you've used them on rats, it causes that massive internal bleeding. Well, he did get transported. I haven't talked to anybody that was on the scene yet, but from all the news reports we got and what we put up on the site was it shut down the ER because he started to vomit. And then they had this, the people claimed they were overcome by the fumes. So now all of a sudden you have the next consideration for anybody EMS watching this. Are you going to wait for hazmat, decon this person, or are you going to, do your paramedicine, but be prepared? So it's one of those very likely things that can happen on a call.
Well,
and affecting multiple agencies.
Just staying with that whole thing. I don't need to hop around, but Matt Blows in the side just put in there, do we have a hazmat alert plan for activation to ERs from this type of exposure? And the answer is every hospital, I think, by federal regulation, has to have some type of exposure plan. Right?
Well, they do. They have a certain plan. Some of them have negative pressure rooms and whatnot. Some departments, and actually what started here, unfortunately, I forget the guy's name. If anybody from Orange County Fire is online, let me know what the lieutenant's name. But an Orange County Fire lieutenant a couple of years ago came up with the term hazmat alert here in Central Florida, just like your trauma alert, STEMI alert, cardiac alert, and every other alert we have, and came out with this hazmat alert that actually became part of our Orange County EMS protocols. So any paramedic, any EMT in the Orange County EMS system has this that we have to go by. And basically what it does is when the paramedic or EMT calls in the hospital, they say it's a hazmat alert. They identify if they know what the chemical is, if decon's been done, any type of interventions that have been done. And there's a few more things to it, but that's basically the gist of it. And the whole idea is to keep the ERs from shutting down so that they're not pulling out their trailers, setting up their tents and their decon stuff and everything else, especially if it's already been done on scene. We're trying to prevent the ERs, and we're kind of getting off total topic, but this one little segment, it's one of those things that, we got a level 1 trauma center here right in Orlando. And if we take somebody in there, let's say with organophosphate poisoning, and we've shut the level 1 trauma center down, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So this hazmat alert, and again, I forget the lieutenant's name, Orange County Fire Rescue, but it's a great thing. Glad he did it. Our medical directors bought in on it, and it's part of our system. If anybody wants it, let me know or send me an email, tweet, whatever, and I'll try and get that information to you because it's something we should share. I mean, it's a good plan.
I know. Not everybody's. I mean, in New York City, we can shut down an ER and throw a rock and hit another class level one.
Yeah.
But
you're just a little bit bigger in New York.
Just a smidge, but but it really comes down to the basic thing where we get a guy. Let's say we break the window, right? What we want to do is break that window as fast as possible. Let's say it's a car, and I keep going back to that whole car because that seems the way we were going. But let's think about it in hazmat, right? So if we have, let's say, a flammable gas inside that car, and the people say, well, if I break the window, aren't I going to pull it from the UEL, the above the explosive lane, down into the flammable range? And the thing is that you do it coordinated. So you hit both the left and the right, upwind and downwind, so it blows out almost instantaneously. And if you don't have an ignition point, then you have a very low likelihood. Listen, we're the fire department. Some things go wrong in our job. All right. But you're going to be geared up, collars, flaps, the hood, the whole game. And we're doing this with, due regard. We take that window and now we get this guy out of that car. And now remember, this guy is going to be off gassing. His clothes are going to be off gassing. You're going to be off gassing. So I don't want to repeat what we did last night. I'm kind of riffing, but when you get undressed as the responder and we get this guy undressed, completely naked, and he's gone, then you are to take off all your stuff, leaving your face piece on, and you basically do the face piece mic drop. That is the last thing you walk away from because you don't want to take a deep breath, pop that thing off, and you drop it and walk away because your shit is going to be, giving off a ton of stuff if it was that hot. I mean, does anybody disagree with that?
No. Everything you just said, Bobby, would be now. Is that hazmat technician are you talking about? Who are you talking about that does all that?
I'm going to say that is anybody. I'm going to say that's aware. Well, listen, first off, awareness level isn't even on the rig. All right, because awareness level, federal regulation are made to not be on the rig. So operations and above, we are on the rig. We go with that because basically awareness is, hello, there's a problem, and that's the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And they call in the operation. So the operation says, we're getting on the rig. We're going to go there and we're going to do defensive operations. Now, is this defensive or offensive? Some would argue one way or the other. Me and Mike, our personal opinions is this is not defensive. This is not offensive. This is defensive. This is something that if we let this go on further, this is going to get worse. This is going to reduce this guy's viability. This is going to make our job worse because maybe the thing's going to get further into the LEL, whatever it might be. If we have charge hose lines, we have competent people there, we have SCBA, proper PPE, the situation secure, open the door, get him out, put this thing to rest as fast as possible. I mean, am I off?
You got some claps. So if the car was on fire,
right?
So like you pretty much did everything we do if the car was on fire, right?
Exactly. What's the big deal?
So I got the opportunity. So Muncie, Indiana, had the hazmat chemical assist suicide on December 28th of last year. So very fresh, within a month ago. So I had the opportunity this morning to talk to some of the guys that were there on scene. And what I'm always thinking about when I hear about these things, because going back further last year, they had the incident in Lowell, Massachusetts, where 11 first responders, EMS, police, unsure whether how many were fire, all went to the hospital for being overcome. So you always think about it. Well, how bad was it? Was it like, Poopy Shoe that I'd mentioned that sits in his car, which was rancid? Is it something that really overcame? So and I'm going to give as much detail as I can until I do the rest of the interviews, and hopefully you can get people on for a podcast. But one of my main questions was when they first approached this home, were they overcome? And the reports from the scene were that the family member and the sheriff's deputy were completely overcome and could not enter. It was that bad. And it took two, I think it was Gaston, Indiana firefighters in SCBA to go in and pull them out.
Right.
And once they pulled them out, they started to go, just there. And if we got into the details, what was it? I believe it was ended up creating H2S, which is a gas, which means once he's in fresh air, he's not contaminated per se compared to the individual that ate rat poisoning and is vomiting. Pulled him out into fresh air, got him on oxygen. My other questions were, did other people have to be deconned? It seemed like once it was in a fresh air environment, everything was good. So this was viable. As far as I know, without violating any HIPAA laws, I believe the individual is still on this side of the dirt.
I see Deletion Drew one. Guys, if you're in the chat room and you want to ask a question, just put in the / which you see down by the send a message. You hit that and you hit Q. And what it'll do is actually put it into our queue as instructors or the guys in the seat to answer your stuff. So in reaction to that, I think your question is hydrogen sulfide. All right. So there's two things. I think it's like /Q. I don't know what that is.
So /Q.
There's two different ways you can go into doing this whole thing. It's going to be a simple asphyxiant and a chemical asphyxiant, all right? So the simple asphyxiant can be done in one of two different ways. It can either have something that will displace oxygen and literally push it out of the way, like, let's say, helium, carbon dioxide, or it can eat oxygen, something like rusting. Now, rusting is a very slow process, but there are things that are very quick, and it can do that same thing. Or you can do that chemical asphyxiant, which is like the carbon monoxide, hydrogen sulfide, sulfur dioxide, et cetera, which will act on your body to change the way either your body moves that air, that oxygen around, or prevents it from taking it. Like carbon dioxide is prevented from jumping in those receptors, and therefore the hemoglobin doesn't move it around. With something else like hydrogen sulfide, sulfur dioxide, et cetera, it actually changes the chemistry and screws up your body. So did I answer his question? I think I did. Are they less predominant? I'll be honest with you, my personal thing, it's so much easier to get a simple asphyxiant. I can go to the I can get a party store. I can get a helium tank and stick the thing up into my exit bag and be done like that. I can get take the old banana in the tailpipe. Somebody said it last night. Tailpipe with a garden hose and put it into my side view window and be done like that. You don't have to get elaborate with this stuff, and this is all very simplistic stuff. You're not mixing like a wizard in the car to make your potion. This is
and that brings up a good point, Bobby, because the recipes, if you will, that they have says, mix a little bit of this and a little bit of that. They're not doing that. They're not measuring out, like you said. They're taking a bottle of this and a bottle of that, and they're pouring it in a 5-gallon bucket in a car, in a closet, whatever. So the amounts that they're getting are 100 times worse. I mean, hydrogen sulfide, the ideal H is only 100 parts per million.
Yeah.
And there were readings and studies that were done that were 1,700, 2,000 parts per million outside the door.
Right, exactly.
So outside the vehicle. That's just crazy.
Yeah, and most of these recipes are made up for that, what you need to kill you plus a little bit fluff.
Right.
They're not giving you enough to kill a city or, the brain Indians or something like that. They're giving you just enough.
And that it just kind of getting back to the first response thing real quick. That's something when you go to that car, that person that's passed out behind the wheel, as a company officer or somebody that's, whoever's in charge of the unit, you should direct your crews to slow down a little bit, try to approach the scene from the right side of the wind. It might take a couple extra seconds, whatever the case may be. Stop short, get out of the car, look, because let's face facts. If somebody's trying to kill himself, they're hell bent on glory. They're going to do it. You know what? There might be a gun sitting in the passenger seat just in case something doesn't work or somebody's trying to interrupt them. They don't want to be bothered. So there's a lot of things besides the chemical that we need to be concerned with.
Well,
so take that extra few seconds, walk around the vehicle, take it from the windward side, and maybe from the height of the vehicle, use binoculars. Every unit should have binoculars anyway. That should just be standard. Yeah. And try and see from a distance before you put yourself and your crew in potentially a very dangerous situation.
Great point. I think about, I don't know if he's on here, but if my engineer was on here, if you're trying to wake him up, you better be within, you better be out of his reach from his right hook. And wake him with a right hook if you're out there, Johnny. It's true.
There he is.
There he is.
Look at his cane. Oh.
So back to Bob's point, because I love that we're going back to the first responder operational, because if somebody watches this and says, it's a bunch of hazmat tech nerds, which we didn't talk about our propellers. I got one that spins really fast, but it's really small. If right now we went on a call for a person slumped over the wheel of a car and PD wasn't on scene and they hadn't done their thing, we're gonna potentially use our wheel chocks from the engine and keep that car from rolling. You know, your classic drunk that's
like over or you pinch it with the rigs.
We're gonna walk up. We're gonna take a little bit page out of the police handbook and kind of walk up. With some concern. Do you see a vomit all over the steering wheel and a vodka bottle, or do you see something? It's really no different than how you should approach it on any call, whether or not it's somebody that really tried to off themselves.
I saw it was a quick trick of the trade, and I thought it was very intelligent, was that if they have a suspected chemical suicide, they're going to have whatever, 1 3/4 or 2.5 inch line, whatever the department SOPs dictate. They wrap the car with it so that the runoff is kind of pooled, and it's also a chock. I thought that's pretty good. I was like, that's not a bad idea. They kind of contain the runoff, and if the thing starts rolling, it's quasi chock. I thought that was a pretty cool idea. So
that's a new one. I've never heard of that. That's good.
I haven't seen it. I heard of it. I said, smart.
When you're through learning, you're through. I mean, you learn something every day.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. Sorry, man. But Phil, go ahead. You're on a roll, man.
Hardly. I think Bob was. But, it goes back, and I got to keep plugging the podcast because I've got a few guys here at the station in on them.
You are the director.
By the way, I haven't seen anything over 4 miles in the last week. I've been watching that Strava data of yours.
I'm just off my game. I was sick.
So, going back to what you talked about last night with the asphyxiants, and then for any of the medics in the room, what, if any, of those, say, chemical related, the toxins, the not just asphyxiant, not just removing oxygen, but if they're able to create something that might release cyanide, if there's anything in their toolkit. I'm a paramedic in Los Angeles County, so I think we get to push a couple of drugs, and that's oxygen and the other oxygen. We don't have a whole lot in our toolkit like some of the medics in, say, the Midwest, and whether or not you would have something for the organophosphates or something for cyanide and all those considerations after the fact.
Right.
That's a good point.
I mean, you know what? Even us in New York City, we don't have. I got to say, we have such a weird system, at least where I work, where I mentioned it last night, where I had, one of the easier ones is the propane and natural gas. Now, yes, they're flammable. And most of the things that we deal with in the chemical suicide are non-flammable, right? They're going to be they're either asphyxiants or they're chemical, but they're mostly non-flammable. Now, the two that I've seen out there are propane and natural gas. Either one, it's a stinky death. It's going to suck for you. But with propane, you got to overcome the relief valve, which is sometimes a pain in the ass to do. And second off, with natural gas, and like I said, there's an etiquette seems to be with these people, is that when you go, you can't shut it off. And you might affect your neighbors, and that's not the cool thing to do. So
right.
I was actually at one where the guy was in a closet. He took the gas line for the natural gas, brought it into the closet, and he had a string tied to the shutoff valve that went under the door, over the clothes rack to his belt loop. And when he went down, he fell, turning off the gas loop.
No
way.
Shit. That's pretty
and it was
good.
Totally Rube Goldberg. And I'm like, what if what if this guy wasn't an engineer or what the hell he was?
That's conscientious.
It's very conscientious, but I mean, it was a good effort. I'll give him an E for effort, but
Did he fall into a pre-made chalk outline?
he should.
Sorry. It's like a mouse trap.
I mean, this honestly, I got to say, this kind of like a code. There's a code.
Yeah.
You do what you need for yourself and don't harm anybody else. They didn't elect to do it. It's not like I jumped off the bridge and, I'm going to take the whole bridge with me. And with somebody's, they design, you could do that shit.
Oh, absolutely. You know what? I have never heard of somebody going to that extent. The one lady that a department had with the helium, she went as far as soon as you open the door, there was a DNR sign on the side of the window. Do not resuscitate.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, hey, don't bother me. I want to do what I want to do. She was very successful. I mean, she tied strings to her wrist, put books in a drawer, and once she put the bag on her head and the hose up there with the helium, she kicked the drawer shut to pull her hands down, so that in that panic-stricken moment, she wouldn't be able to pull the bag up over her head.
Well, very successful, like being almost pregnant.
Yeah, she was determined.
Very successful, like almost pregnant.
Yeah.
You did it, you didn't.
So, but the other things too, and some of the things that they need to talk about is, okay, you have that vehicle with the hydrogen sulfide, let's say. One of the things we talked about, some of the signs, is they're, like we mentioned, they're going to dump several jars, several containers in this 5-gallon bucket. They're going to be dead before it finishes bubbling over. So right. Some of the things, just for hydrogen sulfide, they should, a first responder maybe would notice the yellow discoloration, some other signs that, hey, this might be that type of suicide. But now what are we going to do with it? Are we going to ventilate it? Because what's police going to do? They got to do an investigation, right?
You need to be. We've got a murder investigation. I know this.
Well, maybe not. Yeah, actually, I was.
Question.
But this is something that we also teach is, what do we do for law enforcement brothers? Because they're not going to mess with it. It's a crime scene, so now it's also hazmat and a crime scene. How are we going to help them, or can we help them?
Right.
So that's something that I would talk to everybody and say, hey, listen, reach out to your law enforcement people. This is we've had a problem for years where law enforcement and fire department, there's this, but we need to stop doing that and start working together, because they don't have all the tools. We don't have all the tools, but together we can help each other out. We can help them by ventilating the car. Talk to them. How do they want us to ventilate the car so we don't mess up their crime scene? There's so many different components to this, but we need to work together and get that game plan now, not 3 o'clock in the morning.
Well, that's a great venue to go down. Let's talk about this. Okay, we've gone and we've broke the windows, and I know we keep going back to this car, but you know what? That's where we're going tonight. We're going with the car. It just seems right. But you can move this any way you want. Let's say we have the car. We pull the guy out. It's all over. The ventilation's done. It's a crime scene. We understand it. Now we have this hazmat that's in the car. The police maybe aren't equipped to handle this. We are the hazmat professionals, and we're there to mitigate. So now you have either I hope, just a simple asphyxiant, which literally you just shut off the valve and we're done, right? Because we can just ventilate it with hydraulic ventilation, mechanical ventilation, whatever the hell you want to do. Or do we go with the whole mitigation where we have an acid-based slurry? Do we go with the whole, saying where we start putting it through, and bubbling it through water to kind of knock it down? And
right, that's
where do we go?
The interview I did this morning, they ended up the total on-scene time was 12 hours, but that was obviously well after the patient transport. It was their Department of Environmental Protection, and all of their acronyms showed up. Bobby, you always drop the New York acronyms that you work with. I think it's DEP and D.
Yeah, DEC, the Department of Environmental Conservation, which is the state, and DEP, which is the protection, which is the city. They are the overseer.
And that theirs was a residence, but somebody has to get rid of that hazardous material. A car is in a way almost easier because you could put it on a flatbed. I don't think in California, you'd be violating any DTSC, because at least in California, when you call it a waste, when you're a waste generator, then it's a waste. So we have a little bit of a gray area. I might put that thing on a flatbed. The cops might want to do an investigation on it, but you have to take it somewhere safe, and then you still have to remedy it, whether it's a third party or whether it's your team. But let's put it in the worst case scenario for us, which would be right on the freeway and it wrecked or something. I don't know, where you do have to do. Total topic for another day, but we talked about that last time about a hazmat extrication. Take all of this and then have the person drive into a building, and you've got an extrication that you have to worry about decon of equipment. But anyways, on that particular, the one in Indiana, I had to call all the acronyms out, do proper disposal, proper documentation, and everything. It was, obviously, like I told him, it's somewhat unique. They don't happen necessarily every day, but across the country, actually, it's somebody's getting them. And somebody pointed on there, what about the ones we've been tracking? It's not just big city; it's all over the place. And then I always wonder about the ones that happened that maybe were unreported because they were successful in such a way that, maybe they used chlorine, but they did it in the pool shack, and however it went down.
We've been getting a lot of what the hell I'm not into it, but those things that they vape. It's like a
pacifiers,
cigarette things.
Oh, the vapor.
Well, they put it in that
e-cigarette
and
things?
they inhale it, and it's like a room in your mouth. So a couple of shots of whatever, and they have like the vape cartridges with hydrosulfide, whatever the hell you want, and you pop a couple of shots and you're done. So they put a clothespin and they vape it and they're done.
Paddles?
Coming to a city by you.
Wow, that's a new one. You guys do start everything first. I will admit.
Yeah. So
unless you're from Pearl River,
right? If you see that, even nicotine, like I've seen death by nicotine, where if you take, I hate doing this because it gives guys ideas. If you take cigarettes, let's say a pack of cigarettes, you put it in like a Frisbee, and you let them sit in it for a while, and you leave it out in the sun, that will almost reduce down to a very condensed nicotine amount. And actually in the, what is it called? The muhajin, what the hell is that? Muhajideen? You suck.
I can't. Last time it was German.
Whatever the hell it is.
Well, this is German, so I think it's brought to you by Draeger.
Draeger. They recommend nicotine as a weapons of mass destruction type operation. That's it. That's in their book. So if you concentrate down, hey, thank you, Jay Merkel. Thank you. Thanks for writing it out. I can't get the pronunciation for that. Thank you though. But if you condense down nicotine in a liquid form down to a very concentrated amount, you can give it to somebody and kill them. It's amazing how how concentrated of a paralyzer. I think it's a nervous agent. I think it would be termed nerve agent. Mujahideen. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mujahideen. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
See, those ones would have me
say
wondering
that after
if
a few
they
scotches or whatever we're
meant
drinking
to off themselves, or they thought it was going to be a really good nicotine kick. I don't know.
Yeah.
Back in the day before Google, it was how good were you at tying knots, and if you weren't real good at tying your knot, or finding a good anchor point, you might not have been able to. Or if you didn't have no bridges nearby, it's pretty amazing now how. I'm not sure if people are resorting to it for the effect, or that it's convenient, because it does seem to me that if you don't have a gun, if you don't have all those other resources, what goes into somebody's head to put that together? But there has been those ones. I've yet to interview somebody that's been on one, maybe somebody that's there in the side comments, those that we hear about that were also designed to. We've seen it plenty of times in training, right, Bob? 2 weeks from now, we'll be putting up that sign. Hey, we're setting this up to hurt first responders. But I'm not sure how many of those we get. But, of course, whether they want to not hurt us or not, you could if you stuck your head in there and got a faceful. Like I said this morning when I was interviewing them, I said, well, do you think you could have just covered your mouth and run in there? Was the person just too heavy? No, it was overwhelming. But this was a 55-gallon polydrome full of, product off gassing.
Maybe we can get somebody that's actually done one as an interview and see how. I'm sorry. I'm such an ass.
That's
I always go that. I always go over too far. I'm sorry.
you're in good company.
You go the extra mile, Bobby. That's good. But it's funny because 80. Well, it's not funny. It's kind of sad in a way because 80% of first responders are injured because of these. 80%. That's a big number. And we're not really the information's starting to get out there, but I don't think enough. And hopefully by us doing some of this,
I just want to spin it back towards metering. Okay, because let's take it out of that car. Let's go into the apartment building, the garden apartments, the row frame, whatever the hell you want to call it. And now we have people to the left, people to the right, people above, people below. And what metering are you bringing? All right. So, and this is my personal, I'd like to go around the room and see what you guys think. And even to the comments section, you guys tell me what you think. I'm thinking you're going to be taking the 5 gas, which is going to include your LEL, your oxygen, all right, which are, in my opinion, 2 of the most important sensors we carry. All right. The flammability is going to tell you if you're going to get burned.
Absolutely.
Is there a radiation possibility? Minimal. I'm telling you, it's like minuscule. Don't even. It's. I don't want to say don't bother with it, but don't bother with it. I don't know. I know of one in the last like 5 years where a guy had general malaise, and it was because he was literally building a fissile material, a nuclear device in the next room, and that's why he was calling for general malaise, because he was radiation poisoning. That kind of crap happens in Harlem. So anyway,
right.
But I would go with the 4 gas. Yeah, your standard 4 gas, which is going to be your LEL, your O2, your hydrogen sulfide, and carbon monoxide. And if you can throw in there a PID, that'd be good for identification. Now, the oxygen is going to let you know what's not there. If you see a nation of oxygen, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but remember that 1% of air is equal to 10,000 parts per million of something. But I'm sorry, I don't want to say that wrong. 1% of oxygen is 10,000% of 10,000 parts per million of something. If you get a 1% movement in air, well, that's 50,000, because oxygen is basically 1/5 of air. Are we in agreement with that? Did I just screw that up?
You got it.
I stutter on that stuff. Yep. So that's going to tell you what's really not there, okay? But the LEL is going to tell you a lot of stuff that's going on, because, again, not a lot of this stuff that they're going to use is going to be flammable. Very few things are actually flammable, or common things are going to be flammable. But there's a lot of non-flammable. So where they're going to show up, they're going to show up in your CO2, CO, or they're going to show up in your oxygen as a displacement, because that's literally what they're doing. They're displacing oxygen. So when your oxygen meter drops below 19.5, stop, SCBA, drop back. Are we good with that?
We're good.
Right?
What are your options then?
Yep, absolutely. But and then something too, if I could just mention something real quick, something that everybody should know. What are the common chemical suicides? Hydrogen sulfide, organophosphate, and some kind of oxygen displacement like helium. Those are usually nitrogen. Yeah, anything that displaces oxygen. So those 3 things, everybody, whether you're hazmat operations or hazmat technician, should know the properties of those, so that you know what type of meter to take in.
Right.
And if you don't have it, know who to call that does have it. No, but as far as displaced oxygen, I mean, you know what it's going to be doing.
I don't have
you don't go until your voice gets real high.
That's what I know.
That's what we do.
Even if you don't have a meter and it's an oxygen, you know it's a chemical asphyxiant because it displaces oxygen. Where are you going to
Firehouse response?
Sofa.
It's just a test. I'll mute it.
I got Sofa.
I'm not going anywhere.
You sure?
Did it mute?
No, I can still.
Sorry.
No. That's all right. Hey, this proves that it's live, right? So one of the things that people also need to take into consideration is, hey, what do we have in our arsenal? What can we do? What can't we do? Okay. Don't try to be a hero. If you can't do it, you can't do it. It's that simple. Know who around you can, and you go from there.
Yeah, you're on.
Yeah, that go no go.
You're good.
I think
I just fucking
like the echo thing you did earlier today. It's that risk versus gain we talked about on the operations level. You should be able to open up a car wearing full PPE. We talked about SCBA, full bunker gear, hood, and effector rescue. No different than you would if that car was on fire or leaking fuel. Any of those things that you are is going to cause you to effect a rescue. Now let's go one step further though. You did like Bob said, and you had your binoculars. You really looked down range. Somebody's going to help make that decision. Well, maybe it's not so viable. Or something we didn't talk about is, booby traps and all those things that we're assuming that say the scene is clear. Oftentimes, I think if you get this call and it comes in as something suspicious, PD might have already gone there and they might have already actually ventilated for you by kicking in the door, all those things. But this is all useless if you don't know how to turn on your meter and are not in your right equipment. Or like we talked about, you might end up being on a call where you are not in your SCBA because you were there knocking on the door because the guy that called for general malaise, and you open the door and you get the rescue may not be that easy.
I'm going to say that I don't want to say there's no, but because we should have the situational awareness radar up, but there's not very likely that there's a booby trap. Like I said, there's a code, and they are trying to take themselves out and not you, for the most part.
Right. They want to hurt themselves. They're not really interested in hurting us. Although, could something happen? Absolutely. But again, it goes back to the proper size of it. It's just like when you go to a structure fire. You're sizing it up. Okay, you're giving that report of what you got. You're deciding what hose line you're going to pull, if any, ventilation, if any, whatever the case may be. You got to have a size up for this kind of stuff. And not to get on too much of a soapbox, but the good company officer, the right company officer, is going to have one of his guys getting ready, bunker gear, SCBA. It sounds like overkill. It might be overkill, but you know what? You're going home the next morning to your family. You're going to go to somebody that's passed out behind the wheel of a vehicle. If you don't have any other information, what does it hurt?
Right.
Really, oxygen is free. Put your gear on, put your air pack on, and walk up to the flipping vehicle and check it out.
In here. Sorry to step on you. You just gave a long enough. We got an open seat if this is a appropriate time, Bobby.
Yeah, sure. We got a couple minutes left. And listen, guys, after the show's over, and we started this last night, I thought it went really well, is after the show, we're going to try to keep these to an hour long. After the show's over, we're going to shut off the recording, and we're going to stop recording for the podcast, and we're just going to open up the seat. And we'll stay here until you guys are done peppering us with assaults or whatever you do.
There's no questions, just a lot of comments, though. Sounds like a fire station.
So, I mean, like, listen, if you want to jump in a seat now or after the whole thing's over, if you're a little stage fright. But, yeah, I mean, like, I think we pretty much exhausted this whole topic. I mean, we just did a podcast on this. I'm not promoting a podcast or anything like that, but if you want to listen to more about
I'll promote it for him. I said it last time. I was never a podcaster.
I'll promote it for
you. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it's coming out this Friday, which is going to be whatever the hell it is, the 15th or whatever it is. But we go over the chemical, and we're talking about the ideal H's, and we go over this stuff. There
was a lot of nerd stuff going on too. You
were nerding out last night. Yeah. So it's good stuff. But I mean, these two guys rock. I love these guys.
Yeah,
we love you.
It's got to be this microphone because other than that, I sound.
And Mike, if you're listening, you're not able to join us. We miss you, brother. Yeah. We'll see you next week.
Sure, he's gonna get it there, but let's wraps up another episode of the Hazmat Guys Nation Roundtable. Please be sure to follow us on Facebook pages, the Hazmat Nation and Hazmat Guys. You can find us where the hell is it? It's on Facebook, the Twitter. We're everywhere, right? We're everywhere. We're everywhere. Let's go around the table and tell our friends where they can find us. Bob, where are we going to find you?
Me?
With a glass of wine and a cigar. That's where you're going to find me.
Really good.
Where? Any bar.
Yeah. Well, maybe any bar. HazmatNation.com. Check it out. A lot of good information. good training information, good breaking news, good, just all
love
around good
I
stuff.
love it. I look at it all the time because it just brings together everything. It's just it's a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
Phil, what about you? Where are we gonna find you?
It's all been said. So I love the fact that we had some repeat customers. We've got Jeff Eintech out there and Jeremy Morris, Raw, people that have been following us and clicking on our sites for quite a long time, and I'm really stoked that they've been showing up. It's I don't know. I think we doubled our viewership. The show 18. That's a lot. And then you look at we've got somebody in Europe, and I don't know if Todd Jennings was able to show up from Afghanistan, but remember we had that little blip in the Middle East. He's over there protecting us.
Some guys in Spain, I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
All right. Well, just me. You can find me over at thehazmatguys.com. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Hazmat Guys podcast. You can find us on.
Okay.
He just jumped off. But you can find us. We have a podcast. You can find it on iTunes and Stitcher under the Hazmat Guys. We have 4 different shows. One of them is this. This is the Hazmat Guys Nation. That is on iTunes. You're also going to find us on the Hot Wash, where we review a show, and Instructor's Corner if you're a hazmat instructor or even a fire instructor, or the Hazmat Guys podcast. Well, be sure to catch next week's show. We're going to be doing this every Tuesday night at 9:15 Eastern Standard Time on blab.im. I think this venue, this platform is pretty freaking cool, and I'm very happy to be on this thing. We'll also be producing a podcast version of this for those of you who want to listen to it on the audio-only version under iTunes and the Hazmat Guys Nation. And we're also going to be taking this and putting that cool little intro I made up with the detonation. That is pretty cool, right?
Oh, it's outstanding. Yeah. The intro, if nobody saw it,
there he is. I'm going to deny him. I should know.
Yeah. I got bumped down. Oh, the Area 51 blast site. That was awesome.
Everything you said, I just couldn't see it.
That was really good.
No, but we're going to be putting it out onto the YouTube channel, and our Gmail account is THMG, like the Hazmat Guys Nation. So THMG Nation at gmail.com. You're going to see all these podcasts, the video and the intro and everything like that. So if you want to watch it in the video format, you're more than welcome to. Other than that, I think
I'll see everybody next Tuesday. And I think I might be in the same zip code as Bob, because we're teaching a class in Florida. Fire rescue something.
Yeah, actually, yeah. We'll be here together. So we'll both be drinking wine, smoking cigars.
Most awesome. All right, we're going to shut off the recording now.